right, let's find out what is happening with our little friends here, our little family. Sorry, putting my fingers in your face. I hate doing that, but there we go. That's a little better. Okay. We left off with Merlin asking for whoever were the accomplices of Catherine to come by her side. So then Jane and Mark and Martha appeared beside Catherine, looking nearly as unhappy and uncomfortable as she. Merlin looked really quite startled. Then he shook his head sadly. "So young," he said, "and yet so wicked." "We're not," said Martha, making a rude face. The behavior of the others was more seemly. "You see, sir," began Mark. "We didn't mean to," began Jane. "Let me," said Catherine. "I started it." And in a rush of words and tears, she told Merlin everything, beginning with the charm and her wish to travel back in time, and going on to what she had hoped to do and what she'd done and where she'd gone wrong. "I wanted to do a good deed," she said, "and I did one when I rescued Lancelot from that old dungeon. But then he wasn't properly grateful at all and made me undo it so he could rescue himself, all for the sake of his old honor. And that made me cross, and just now I pretended I was defeating him so the other knights wouldn't be so jealous of him. But really, I was just trying to get back at him for being so stuck up, and I always wanted to fight in a real tournament anyway." "Well, now you have," said Merlin. "And what good did you by it? Just made everybody thoroughly unhappy." "I know," said Catherine. "That's what comes of meddling," said Merlin. "There is a pattern to history, and when you try to change that pattern, no good may follow." Catherine hung her head. "However," went on Merlin, and to the surprise of the 4 children, he was smiling now, "all is not lost. I have a few magic tricks of my own, you know. Let me see. How shall I handle this? I could turn back time, I suppose, and make it as though this day had never happened, but it would take a lot out of me." "Really?" said Catherine in surprise. "It would be a mere nothing to us." Merlin looked at her a bit grimly. "Oh, it would it?" he said. "Oh, yes," went on Catherine happily. "I could wish Lancelot were twice as near as here again, and then I could wish that he'd defeat me twice, and then I could wish that the people would honor him twice as much as they ever did, and then I could wish—" "Hold!" cried Merlin in alarm. "A truce to your wishes before you get us in worse trouble. I think I had best see this wonderful charm of yours." He made a pass at Catherine with his wand. "If there be any magic among you, let it appear now or forever hold its peace." Catherine's hot hand, which for so long had clutched the charm, opened in spite of itself, and the charm lay in plain sight on her palm. Merlin looked at it. His eyes widened. He swept his tall hat from his head and bowed low before the charm 3 times. Then he turned to the children. "This is a very old and powerful magic," he said, "older and more powerful than my own. It is in fact too powerful and too dangerous for 4 children, no matter how well they may intend, to have in their keeping. I am afraid I must ask you to surrender it." He made another pass with his wand. The charm leaped gracefully from Catherine's hand to his own. Mark spoke. "But it came to us in our own time," he said, "and that's a part of history too, just as much as this is. Maybe we were meant to find it. Maybe there's some good thing we're supposed to do with it. There is a pattern to history, and when you try to change that pattern, no good may follow." Merlin looked at him. "You are a wise child," he said. "Just average," said Mark modestly. "Dear me," said Merlin, "if that be so, if all children be as sensible as you in this far future time you dwell in—" He broke off. "What century did you say you come from?" "We didn't," said Mark, "but it's the 20th. "The 20th century," mused Merlin. "What a happy age it must be. Truly the golden age that we are told is to come." He stood thinking a moment. Then he smiled. "Very well. Go back to your 20th century," he said, "and take your magic with you and do your best with it. But first, I have something to say." He held the charm at arm's length, rather as though he feared it might bite him, and addressed it with great respect. "I wish," he said, "that in 6 minutes it may be as though these children had never appeared here, except that they, and I, will remember. And I further wish that our tournament may begin all over again and proceed as originally planned by history, only twice as much so. he added to be on the safe side. Now may I have it back, please? Asked Catherine when he had done. In a minute, said Merlin. By the way, have you been making a lot of wishes lately? It feels rather worn out to me. It won't last forever, you know. Oh dear, we were afraid of that, said Jane. How many more do we get? That would be telling, said Merlin, but you'd best not waste too many. It might be later than you think. Oh, cried Martha, maybe we'll never get home. Don't worry, said Merlin, smiling at her. There are still a few wishes left for you, and one more for me. Again he held the charm out before him. And I thirdly wish, she said, for the future protection of the world from the terrible good intentions of these children, and for their protection against their own folly, that this charm may, for twice the length of time that it shall be in their hands, grant no further wishes carrying said children out of their own century and country, but that they may find whatsoever boon the magic may have in store for them in their own time and place. He put the charm into Catherine's hands. And now you'd best be going, because in less than a minute, by my wish, it will be as though you'd never appeared here, and if you aren't home when that happens, goodness knows where you will be. But what about the good deed I wish, said Catherine. None of the ones I tried worked out. My child, said Merlin, and his smile was very kind now. You have done your good deed. You have brought me word that for as far into time as the 20th century, the memory of Arthur and of the Table Round, which I helped him create, will be living yet, and in that in that far age, people will still care for the ideal I began enough to come back through time and space to try to be of service to it. You have brought me that word, and now I can finish my work in peace and know that I have done well. And if that's not a good deed, I should like to know what is. Now, goodbye. Wish quickly. You have exactly 17 seconds. Catherine wished. And because their mother and Miss Bick had been worried yesterday that by their being so long away, she put in that when they got home, they should only have been gone 2 minutes by real time. This was really quite thoughtful of Catherine. Perhaps she, too, like Mark the day before, had learned something during her day of adventure. The next thing the four children knew, they were sitting in Catherine and Martha's room, and it was still that morning, and they had only been away from home a minute. Yet that minute was packed with memories. Did we dream it? Asked Catherine. I don't think so, or we wouldn't all remember it, said Mark. And we all do, don't we? Said Jane. And they all did. What did that last mean, that Merlin wished on the charm? Martha wanted to know. It means we have to keep our wishes close to home from now on, Mark told her. No more travels to foreign climes, said Jane, and I was all set to take us on a pirate ship next. No more olden times, said Mark, and I've always wanted to see the Battle of Troy. You might not have liked it once you got there, said Catherine from the depths of her experience. Traveling in olden times is hard. I don't care, said Martha. I don't care if I never travel at all. I'm glad to be home. Aren't you? And they all were. Chapter 5, What Happened to Martha? We'll have to find out about that tomorrow. Stay tuned.